Hello, and welcome to a very special Texas edition of Learn the Shit Out of Excel, the only web series where I get drunk and teach you Microsoft Excel in Texas. My name is Marcus Robinson. Let's get started.
As Earth at Derby and Brady, Art of Texas.
We're going to be working with a couple of different formulas. To start off, we're going to work with the sum formula. We're going to move into the sum if formula and then the sum ifs formula. And then we're going to wrap things up by working with a pivot table by special request of my college friend, Jessica Nesselhoff Porter, Jess Ness, as we used to call her back in the day. So let's start out with the sum formula. Now, we have a table here of different data. We've got like salesman, a company, and sales numbers, very generic stuff. I got Steve Dave, and then a list of restaurants that I used to work at back in the day, and then some random sales numbers. So when you want to add stuff up in Excel, there are a couple different ways you can do it. You can basically add up a bunch of different cells. You can see that I'm adding C2 and C3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 all together. That is the worst possible thing you can do. It is stupid, and I judge you for it. Seriously, when I see people do this stuff, I make fun of them, sometimes to their face, usually in my head. Anyway, so this is a terrible idea because look at this. None of these cells are locked down. They're all, I don't know. If you were to copy this and paste it there, look at that. They all move. So that's no bueno. You can't have that stuff. Now, equally bad is using the sum formula with a bunch of commas because that's where you specify a bunch of individual cells. You can use commas in the sum formula to specify different cells or different ranges if you want, and that's fine if you need to do different ranges, but doing a bunch of individual cells is a terrible idea. It's too much work. Now look at this formula right here. This is just a range. Now granted, I didn't lock it down by using the F4 button, boom and boom, but it's way more compact, way more precise, and it takes up a lot less space than this and this. They're terrible. So this is definitely the way you want to go. Now, if you wanted to add, like, say, a second range to that, you sure can by typing in, like, let's say you wanted to add, like, D2 to D10, and then if you had values in there, that would work. So you could do that. So let's watch. See? It's adding stuff, and that's great. Whoopity-doo. So you can do that with the sum formula. You can do ranges separated by a colon. That's how ranges work in Excel. You have a starting number and then an ending number. If you wanted to, say, do D10, I'm going to put a $sign in there like that. You can also do that. That'll make a big old box, and that'll add all them stuffs up too, see? So that's one way to do it. That's the sum formula. Now the sum if formula adds a condition, just like the if formula that we worked with last time. You can see here that I have a sum if statement. Hold on, let me change that. So here we have a sum if statement. It adds a conditional clause to the summation, if you will, of the numbers. So here, it's only adding stuff, it's only adding sales for Steve. And we'll go through the arguments one by one. The first argument is range. So what is the range for the criteria? This is the criteria range, I suppose you should call it. I don't know how to describe it. That's where that's basically, it should be criteria range, honestly, because that's where you're comparing, that's what you're comparing the criteria to. So we're going to go through A2 to A10 and look to see if it's equal to H2, which is the value Steve. So anytime it is equal to Steve, we want to add the numbers in C2 to C10. Now it's always good to have those next to each other because the arrays have to line up. You can't have, it's always a good idea to have the same number of elements in your array, in your range array as your sum range array. That's all there is to it. So you can see they both start at 2 and go to 10. And so when you hit this, you can see that Steve has $1,150 in sales. Good for him. Now I locked that stuff down with the exception of the H2 cell because when I copied it down below, the H2 got updated to H3, and you can see that it's adding up for Dave, who only has $150 in sales. Poor Dave. Say you want to have multiple criteria, that's where you use the SUMIFS formula. SUMIFS can use multiple criteria over multiple criterial ranges. Criterial? Yeah, I'm going to use that. So here's the SUMIFS statement. Basically, we want to add up all of the sales totals where Steve sold something to Sonic. And so the way that works is you have one sum range and you have two criterion ranges and two criteria. Let's start at the very beginning of the formula with argument number 1. That's your sum range. Remember, you only get one of these, so that's C2 to C10 just like it was in the other formulas. Now this is where it gets different because then you start with the criteria range instead of the criteria like you do in the SUMIF statement. So this is A2 to A10. So A2 to A10 is the salesman. So in the next argument, we're looking for Steve in K2. The next criterion range is B2 to B10. That's where we're looking for Sonic, which is located in L2. That's basically it. So you can see that he had $1,050 in sales just to Sonic. And if you go over here and look, Steve had Barbary Coast for $100, and then Sonic, and then Sonic, and then Sonic. So his total of $1,150 minus the 100 to the Barbary Coast is $1,050, which is exactly correct. So that's basically the sum, SUMIF, and SUMIFS statements. Now let's get over to what do you call it? Oh yeah, pivot tables. Now the pivot table is located on the insert part of the ribbon, and it is the leftmost button. If you want to do a pivot chart, you can do that too. They function pretty much the same as pivot tables, only they're charts, not tables. So we're going to click on that right there, and it's going to ask us for a range. Now we are going to select table 1 because I formatted that as a table. Usually that would say like A1 to D8 or whatever. I don't care. So this is what a pivot table screen looks like. Now sometimes you don't have that that pivot table like control panel, if you will, on the right side of your screen. If you ever lose that, click on the actual pivot table on the left side of your screen and it comes back. All right, so to start with the pivot table, you need to specify what fields you want to add to the report. So we're going to add the salesman, which automatically adds it down here in the row labels. You can see that. And then we want to add the company, and that puts it in the row as well. But we're going to drag company over to columns to make it a column header. Do you see what just happened there? Now you can see Steve and Dave, Steve Dave, by Golden Corral, Sonic, Barbary Coast, the Boathouse, and the grand total of everything. Now we need something to put into the actual values of the report, so we're going to add total sale, and you can see that down here under values it has a sum of total sale. So this is all the information that we have already seen in the other sheet. You see Dave sold $50 to the Golden Corral, $1 to Sonic, nothing to the Barbary Coast, $99 to the Boathouse, for a grand total of $150. Just like it says here, $150. Now, you might wonder how I'm doing that without like a mouse, because I left mine at the training class thing. If you press and hold Control and do page up and page down, it'll let you navigate through the sheets in your Excel workbook. That's kind of handy. I like keyboard shortcuts. Now, you can also see, we'll verify this also, Steve didn't sell crap to Golden Corral, because why would he go there? He sold 1,050 to Sonic, 100 to the Barbary Coast, nothing to the Boathouse, and he has a grand total of 1,150. Now, combined total for the guys, 1,300. Not bad. Yay, team. So now, if you want to change the values, you notice how you've got like the values over here and you got a little sum kind of symbol. If you right click, sorry, maybe it's not right click. If you click on the little drop down box and go to field value field settings, you can change that and you can see a count. So we're going to go by count, and you can see that Dave sold 1 to Sonic and Golden Corral and Boathouse each. And Steve sold 3 to Sonic and 1 to Barbary Coast. Now, another thing that you can do with the values is you can do averages. So if you want to see the average, you can do that. You can see that Sonic, the average order was $350, and since they're really the only people that show up more than one time, they're the only client that shows up more than once. You can see that it averages that. Everybody else only showed up once, so it's the same number. So Steve's averages sales is $287.50, and we can format that if you want, which I'm sure you do. So let's highlight that and click on that number right there. In fact, let's make them all money signs because everybody loves the money. And that's it. Also, you can expand your columns. Do you see what my cursor looks like right now? If your column is too small, and you ever see these little pound signs, that means you have too much information to display in the cell. Now, you can either shrink the font, which I do not recommend, or you can just get your cursor to look like that and then double click, and booyah, it expands to just enough to show that stuff. So I'm kind of all over the board on that one, but that's the basis of a pivot table. And if you want, like say you wanted to show company by salesman in a different way, you could do it like this, where you could show Dave by Golden Corral, by Sonic, by Boathouse, and then his total, well, no, then not his total. You could show Steve by Sonic and Barbary Coast, and those are still averages. So let's crank those out to totals again real quick, and I'll show you what that looks like. I'm sorry, I should say sums. See, then you can see that Steve has a total of 1,050. That's 1050 by 100, and Dave has 51 and 99 for 150 total, etc. So you can bust it down like that. The neat thing there is that you can wrap things up and shrink stuff. So that's the sum formula, the sum if formula, the sum ifs formula, and pivot tables in a nutshell. I don't really know what else to tell you. I'd like to thank this week's beer, Lone Star, for being, I don't know, made in Texas, you know what I mean?
This love is a blaze, I saw flames from the side of the stage, and the fire brigade comes in a couple of days. Until then, we got nothing to say and nothing to know, but something to drink and maybe something to smoke. Let it go until our roads are changed, singing we found love in a local raid. No,
I am not able to connect to